Hey guys, welcome back. It's December 11th today, and yesterday I didn't get to make a video because I was so tired from my day work. Quote unquote, have not escaped the matrix just yet. In any case, let's review the Bitcoin chart for today. So, like I've said before, we're still abiding by this trend line, which, of course, it's a local trend line, but for now, it seems like the price is holding up. So, for example, we were worried about a breakdown below the yellow trend line earlier this week, but we're able to bounce back up. Had a pretty big day today, and we're back above $100,000, which is great. Um, MACD line still under the signal line, so it's always a possibility that we could go down from here. Just looking at the MACD alone, of course, that does not explain the whole picture. Um, since I'm mentioning trendline, we can talk a little bit about trendline and sort of my philosophy, when I think of trendline in general and the realm of TA. Is this like a magic line? Oh, you just draw a trend line and the price magically bounces up and down off the trend line. Is that really the case? Well, the short answer is no. Um, in my humble opinion, I believe it is a phenomena due to human psychology. So, for example, we can think about it like this. So, some years back in the past, somebody was looking at the stock charts and they decided to come up with this thing called technical analysis. If it was just one or two, person that was doing this thing, well, it really wouldn't matter, right? But, I think the fact of the matter is, I mean, thousands and thousands and millions of people used technical analysis to help with their trading and investment strategy. And basically, what I think is going on is we're all drawing the same line. So it's not just me, there's not some sort of magic formula. There are probably thousands and thousands of other investors and traders out there drawing this exact same line. And, if you're trading based on this line, essentially you're saying, okay, well, this is the lowest price given this local trend line, and therefore I should buy here. Oh, and then the price goes up because more people are buying, you see? So essentially, it's a consequence of the mass trading based on some predetermined line. At least that's what I think of it. Um, so then the other side of that argument would be, well, why would anything deviate from the trend line then? Why would something break out or break down below? And really, that a lot of it has to do with macroeconomics, some sort of black swan event or some sort of news in general, meaning it would have to be some sort of event where people no longer need to be abiding by the trend line. Either they feel super good about it, so they're going to deviate off the trend line and keep buying. Something like that happened over here, right? So essentially, for example, this would be the result of the U.S. presidential election. Um, you know, a pro cryptocurrency president being elected, and you see a you know you see candles that break away from a trend line, which, essentially would have been something along these lines, essentially extending summer like that. Let me draw an example for you. So, for example, back in October, November, if I was drawing a trend line, then I would draw something like this and say, okay, well, perhaps, that's an appropriate trend line. And then you see the price breaking away. And this was beginning of November. So when people are more bullish about the result of the election. Another example would be, well, breaking down towards the bottom. And, for example, I could go back to the last bull cycle, 2021, which was an interesting cycle because you had a double top. Um, and, some may argue, okay, well, just taking this white trend line as an example over here. Okay, so it's a good trend line. You're retesting a couple of times. And why would we deviate away from that? Well, perhaps people, well, at the time, there were a lot of other news events happening. But in general, it's likely that a lot of people felt the bull cycle is over. Everybody started to sell. And, if things like that happen, and there's some certain agreement among the majority, then you're going to break away from that trend line. So I would say that's the easiest way to think about it. For now, it looks like we're still abiding by this trend line. So we'll see. I think eventually we will break away from this towards the upside, um, especially during the exponential phase of the bull cycle. I would imagine anywhere, around the summertime of 2025 to early fall is when I would expect that. Also keep in mind, like I've said before, you can see 30 to 40% pullbacks. And of course, that would be a pullback away from some local trend line. So, be prepared for that. That is nothing unusual. A lot of people are saying because of the large institutional buyers, especially during this bull cycle, in addition to the ETF, that we may not see pullback like we've seen in the past, but you never know that. I mean, you cannot guarantee that. So always be mindful and do not panic sell. Of course, not financial advice, but I just want you guys to be aware. And it's happened every cycle thus far. Next, let's talk about Bitcoin dominance very quickly. So, the dominance itself is just doing its own thing. I mean, like I've said before, I really don't mind looking at this on a daily basis or even like a weekly basis. But at this point in the bull cycle, where I predict the peak of the bull cycle to be around September of 2025. So, that is less than 1 year. Everything from this point on is going to be short-term gains. Long-term gains should have happened before September of this year. I've gone over that on our different platform. So at this point, I'm not as focused on looking at the Bitcoin dominance until I'm ready to exit my altcoin positions, like I've said before. Still fun to look at just to see where Bitcoin dominance is in general, but that is my main purpose for looking at the Bitcoin dominance chart. And right now is nowhere near that. I really would not even expect that until spring of 2025 at the earliest. Of course, one of my hypotheses is first there would have to be a Pi cycle top indication, And then after that, I would want to see the Bitcoin dominance drop below 44.0% before I pull out. But we can dive more into how I came up with that strategy. I personally have not seen that strategy anywhere else. Of course, I also don't think it's that unique of a concept. It's kind of like entrepreneurship and startup, right? So you might think that you have the most original idea, but I guarantee you at least 100 other people have the same idea. So it's not really about having originality, but it's having the ability to execute on your plans. So always keep that in mind as well. Um, and then next, I just want to go over the meme coins that I mentioned on my last video. So let's go over to Dex Tools. Try to get rid of the advertisement on the side. Okay, so what's going on? So let's start out with Turbo first, the Ethereum network coin that I had mentioned before. Same thing happening, right? Same thing. So, we had this huge pullback not so long ago. And I said, well, is possible that we could see a breakdown away from this blue trend line. But guess what? Maybe there were thousands of other people who were thinking that, this trend line is strong and, we will retest above it. And therefore, if anything, this is the perfect buying opportunity. And, you know, I personally believe that's what happened. So, a lot of these buyers over here, they got a pretty good deal, at least out of all these price points. Of course, you would have gotten a better deal, anywhere, anytime before that, except maybe over here. But in general, they probably did a good job dollar cost averaging. And then we had this great green candle to the upside, a little bit of retest, but now we're above the blue trend line again. So we'll see. I mean, if you just look at the past 6 months or so, there's not a huge difference in price. So people who have bought, back in May or June, I mean, they haven't seen a huge increase. Me personally, I was actually looking at my transactions from the past, and I have already 18x'd on Turbo, um, which was a little surprising, but I'm pretty happy. And again, this is a meme coin, really low utility. It's just for fun, just for entertainment. But I do think that this is one of those coins that could even, 20x from here, I'll say. 10 to 20x from here. Uh, I'm done with purchasing more turbo, so I'm not buying any more at this time, but I am pretty happy with the amount that I'm holding already. And so I'm just waiting for the bull cycle top, and then I will eventually swap back to Ethereum when the bull cycle is near the end. Second, I just want to talk about WIF very quickly. So let's wait for the chart to load. Nothing too crazy. We're still in this plateau stage. I'm a little curious as to when we'll start going up. The only thing to be cautious about is, remember, if we're retesting that blue trend line over here, we still have some room to go on the downside. So right here is sort of in the $2.50 range. So something to keep in mind. For example, I don't want you to be watching this video. It's not financial advice, but you watch this video and you say, okay, well, it had a 10+% increase in the past 24 hours. It looks good. you put all your life savings, maybe you leverage, which, you know, I'm not sure if that's quite wise to do that with meme coins, especially. Um, and then you get burned because it retests the trend line back to $2.50, and you're like, oh, well, what happened? I mean, I bought, all my bag at, a little over $3, and now it's like 250. Well, that's why I'm showing you these charts, just so that you're mindful of, what could be the possibility in the short term. Um, Next, let's just go over Popcat, my favorite one. Okay, same thing with Popcat, right? So it continues to, retest the blue line, and you'll see more of it if I were to, for example, um, go on like a 1 minute interval or 5 minute interval. You'll see a bunch of candles retesting that blue trend line. But I'm not a day trader, so if anything, I swing trade, but in the crypto space, I really do like a bull cycle to bull cycle trading. So, that's like a 4 year interval. So really, I don't do anything less than like, um, you know, for example, I believe I'm using uh, like the weekly interval, and I'm happy with that because my time scale is larger. In any case, even for Popcat, there's some room to go. Um, Sort of an easy way to interpret my thought processes, and I won't be using technical terms, but anytime you look at this candle and basically like a green box with a line and a red box with a line, although the tail, if you will, the thinner part of this candle is touching the blue line, technically there's still more room to go down because in general, it have to look something like this, where the thicker part of the candle is actually touching the blue line. That's a very layman's way of explaining, but that's essentially a true retest of the trend line. So when the thick part of the candle is actually touching the trend line, you can call that a true retest, at least in my humble experience. So I really wouldn't be surprised if there's another candle down the road where the thick part of it is actually touching the blue trend line, and then we move upwards from there. Okay, so that's how I like to do my technical analysis, and that's my approach. Just because a lot of things have been bouncing back, I just want to lastly talk a little bit about, FOMO. Okay, not FOMO, a crypto coin, but fear of missing out in general. Um, when we're talking about investment. So, for example, let's say that, Turbo, this candle showing a positivity of 39.82%. And then a bunch of people start talking about Turbo. Oh my gosh, it's the greatest project ever. People should definitely buy into it. I would just be cautious with that approach because oftentimes, more than not, I mean, for here, we actually saw an additional increase. But take this for example, back here, you have like 104% increase, and then the next day there's a minus 28% decrease, right? So this is very common to see in trading. So I don't want you to get burned. And usually what happens with most retail traders is you see this big green candle, a bunch of people start talking about it. You start forming fear of missing out, FOMO. You buy into it, and then you get burned by this big red candle. here, for example, it was like 3 consecutive candles. So, my best advice is if somebody mentions something, just take your time to study, do some research on your own, and invest if it makes sense to your investment strategy. So it's true, if you did not invest right away, you might have missed on this candle over here, but that's fine. Um, because in my experience, it's better to take the time to research than go ahead and purchase instead of just, reflexively purchasing right away, sort of like a knee-jerk reflex, because more often than not, you'll end up getting burned by the pullback. Um, in any case, the video is getting a little long today. I just want to keep it to 20 minutes max. So, hopefully I'll be able to talk a little more tomorrow. Um, and otherwise, have a good rest of your night, and I'll see you later. Thank you. Bye.